You're tuned in to RX Radio.
Yeah, well, I mean, how long have you been in the gym business for?
Oh man, I mean, running my own business has now been, I think we're like seven plus years. But I mean, I started this at 20 years old, so like 30 years now.
It's
Maybe
wild.
51.
I was on a lecture this morning, and a kid was born in 2006.
Right.
Right. I'm like, I don't even know what that means, dude. Like, how were you born? How old? What are you, 4 years old? He's like, I'm 20 something. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Or 19.
Yeah, there's a certain
math.
year when people start spouting years at me, I'm just like, I don't know how long ago that was. Like,
right.
Years 20,
Yeah.
I don't know. Just tell me.
I'm putting in my credit card details. I'm scrolling down the list trying to find 1990, and I was like, this used to be a lot easier. I don't know what happened. It was like, yeah, it happened. Well, look, we don't do an intro.
At least you're not scrolling down to the 70s, so.
You wear it well, man. If I tell you what, you've done good for the city miles you put on yourself. Holy shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're someone
about 97, but externally, all right.
Well, at this point, man, like, I mean, I think you may be our most returned guest.
Yeah, I was surprised when you said, do you want to come on again? I was kind of like, really? I'm not sure what else I've got left to say. But yeah, no, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 30 years in the industry, I'm sure we can't wrap up 30 years in the industry in 4 episodes of the podcast, I'm sure. So
no, true.
Yeah, and the reason, and it's funny because I think now it's probably more of a pertinent conversation than ever. I think, you know, given the nature of social media, the post-COVID industry, people are getting back to work in person is sort of a phenomenon that's industry that transcends industries, right? Like every, you know, Forbes 500 company, every big shot CEO white guy at the top of the hill is like, hey, get your fucking ass back into the office. And I think the fitness industry has a similar call to action, right? Like I have seen like the Bali coach digital age bubble kind of burst a little bit. But so I think it would be a great time to have you on to talk about like what does the post-COVID pre-AI training landscape look like? And what are you seeing from, you know, for those of you who don't know, John owns Hybrid Gym in LA. Used to be not even bi-coastal, you'd be international, and was in Australia for a long time. And you know, you've seen the evolution in the fitness industry transform through so many trends and so many changes of the tide. I'm curious, like, what are you seeing change in this new kind of transition we're in of like people are getting back into gyms, right? But people are, you know, the technology and the superimposition of tech in fitness. How do you see us kind of transitioning into this post-COVID era? What do you see kind of coming up as the next thing?
I do think the integration of in-person, you know, and then online, and obviously technology's, you know, kind of here to stay. AI is becoming, you know, a big thing. You know, a lot of the things I've been talking to my coaches about recently is, you know, the AI coming along and basically being able to write a nutrition plan. It can write a training plan. It can write some of this stuff better than most coaches if the individual's asking the right questions. So I think from a coaching point of view, it's reminding yourself what your value actually is in person. And when people come to you, why are they coming into a gym environment, whether it be group training, semi-private, private? I think, you know, what I've seen in downtown recently, LA, and again, very different in different places, but obviously people have been a lot more careful how much I think they spend on personal training. I think the small group, semi-private stuff is starting to take off, like getting 4 to 6 people, you know, with one coach, and then having all the nutrition and stuff be almost online and, you know, a check-in per week. I'm seeing things like that, but I think no matter how much technology comes on, you know, on board, I think people still realize they need that interaction and that, like, a bit of a community aspect to their training, whether it's every single day or just a couple of times a week. I think, you know, what you were just saying about people coming back to the gym floor a little bit, you know, the online market got super saturated, you know, and everybody out there is telling you how to earn, you know, your $10,000 months, $20,000 months, all this stuff, and it's just not it's just not how it is. I'm sure there are a ton of people earning that kind of money and doing really well, but it's a much smaller percentage than I think social media would have you believe. So there's a lot of people chase the online dream and we're just struggling to get business in, for numerous reasons as to why they struggle there. Obviously, you've got to be good at marketing and sales, and you've got to do a lot of stuff online that a lot of coaches don't really like doing. And I think that drifts people back to the gym floor, especially if they came from the gym floor, because it's kind of, that's your home, right? That's your comfort zone a little bit. Like, if I can't get clients online, I do know how to get clients in the gym. Or, you can come to a gym. There's plenty of gyms now like ours whereby we get the clients for you, and all you've got to really do is focus on the training. So I think post-COVID, everyone shifted and wanted this online lifestyle. I think the people that made it work won't ever go back, because the kind of money in that and potential freedom is good. I think there's also the flip side where people do it and realize it doesn't give them the freedom that they thought it was going to give them. This whole, you can work from anywhere, but then you start traveling around and now your check-ins are at 10 o'clock at night because you've changed time zones, and it's just not, I don't think everything is cracked up to be. I think for those that get it right and love that lifestyle, it's great. I think not everyone loves it, and I think the gym floor can be a little bit simpler. Yes, you've now got your hourly rate and you can only do so many hours in a week, but I think people gelling the two together and maybe going, right, I've got this many in-person clients and I work with this many clients online, and kind of, having the two together is not a bad approach. So I'm seeing a lot of that, for whatever reason, whether it's a financial reason that's bringing them back to the gym floor, and or what. But I do see that as where things are at, kind of at the moment.
So it's from like a brick and mortar perspective, right? Because you really cut your teeth in the brick and mortar space. From working at one of the largest multinational PT high-end body transformation gyms in the world. Really, I think probably one that set the precedent, set the benchmark for the kind of quality in one-to-one PT, and then transitioning into your own space. How has personal, because it's funny now, like, with Prescript and what we do, we're getting a lot of big box gyms trying to outsource personal training development. And I have to have a lot of conversations with, and I'm not going to name some of our partners, but like with some of the biggest gyms in the world. And, we specialize. Like we're applied biomechanics, functional anatomy, right? Like, we'll tell some dumb stories and a couple of bad jokes, and it's a textbook, and, it's just, this is what, but like there's a conflation between the two, right? At the corporate level, one of the things that I need to really warn some of our partners is like, we just handled like this part, like the work product part, what goes on paper, how do we adapt in a session, things like that. But like personal training, this is not personal training development. This is education. Yeah. You've come from and continue to harbor an environment of personal training development. How has your focus, or how has your focus changed over like the course of the last decade? Like when you're sitting down, because I think one of the things that you guys do really well is personal training development, where you take people who may be completely green in the field, and not only, here's the gym, here's the equipment, here's the model, here's the clients, but you also like, here's not just the education of like, this is a bicep, this is a calf, but like, it's much, and I hate to use the word holistic. Maybe we've both been in California too long, but a more holistic approach of like, no, personal training development has a lot more. It has a lot more to do than just education. Like, what are the big rocks that you're seeing from a personal training development standpoint with the staff that you have at Hybrid?
I think like, my approach to this has kind of gone in a little bit of a circle. Like, I've always been big, and as you should be, but I think this is some of the bits that are missing, like obviously professionalism, service. We're a service industry, and I think what people get wrong is, sometimes it's like, what industry you're in, and they'll be like, well, I'm in the fitness industry. It's like, no, we're kind of in the service industry. If you see it as just the fitness industry, then you're missing a huge chunk of what it is you're actually supposed to be delivering, with a client, and what a coach is supposed to deliver. I swung far towards, a high level of education, and that the highest educated trainers should rise to the top and should become the best coaches. And some do, but a lot don't, because then they struggle to kind of really apply those principles to the actual client that's in front of them. Or they'll kind of go down that rabbit hole of like reading so much studies, science, and preaching from that. And I think, and having not really done it, and that became a little bit of a problem. So I try and balance the two out. I think, you know, coaches need to be as highly educated as possible. And I think they need to understand that that's adding in basically more problem solving. So the more knowledge you acquire, ideally, and add that with experience, the quicker you can problem solve for whatever that person is in front of you. But it really doesn't matter how much of that you have if you're just not a professional. If you don't understand what carrying yourself as a professional looks like, treating this job just like you would if you was a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, which is how I've always seen it. You know, my real focus in this industry is to raise standards, because there's a lot, as you see, there's an awful lot of shit out there. You know, you only got to go in your local gym for a workout and you watch what some of the coaches do there. Probably shouldn't even call them coaches, trainers, whatever. Title, they shouldn't have a title. You know, they're on the phones, they've got their hands in their pockets, they're not really looking at what the clients are doing, they're not really doing anything, and there's such a low barrier of entry to this job. The difference between what we kind of class as the elite coaches out there versus someone who's just coaching, and then the pay difference is not always that much either. I do think sometimes there's an attitude issue of, you know, this is a lowly paid kind of industry, so I'm not really going to work that hard, or it's a side gig to a lot of people. And so my biggest battle is always making it clear that, as you know, as far as I'm concerned, especially if you come and work for us, this is a profession, and you are in the service business. And the service business means obviously you're there to deliver, you know, the knowledge that you have, and be able to help a client apply what they need to apply in order to get the result they kind of want. But at the same time, there's that fine line of, do we really know what the client values? Do trainers even ever ask why a client likes training with them? And my answer to that is always no, because most trainers daren't ask. So if you're being like, oh, I think it's because I'm super knowledgeable, I think it's because I know all this stuff, I'm probably like, probably not. You know, they might just like your friendly face when you walk in at 6 a.m. and the support and the motivation. And the other stuff is a byproduct of that. Is your job, that is what you're supposed to do, but what are you doing on top of the qualifications and the education you've learned? How are you actually bettering your service, and how are you actually figuring out what service means to the paying customer? Because they're the ones that it really matters to. You know, so as a gym owner, I'm always asking for a ton of feedback. We don't always get it, but I want the feedback. I want to know what it is that our clients really like about training at hybrid and training with a certain coach that they have. And the answer can be a little different, you know, amongst different coaches. They all have different strengths and weaknesses when it comes to personality and the way they deliver the product. But I think there's a big missing link there as to, okay, what is the value of, and let's use the term personal trainer for now, because that keeps it kind of clear. I know, like, the industry likes the term coach, and so do I, but it's like, okay, let's look at who we're actually servicing here, and mostly it's Gen Pop clients. What do they need? What do they value? And how do we learn those skills off the back of, you know, because we can all talk about, okay, you know, the reason you might lose clients is maybe they don't get a result, maybe they're not progressing. But that's happening in every gym, and people still go to the gym. So is that the only thing that helps you keep a client and retain them? I don't think so. I think there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more to that relationship building that some people, I think, miss, and they're not quick to really read the room and read their clients and read their clients' reaction and faces, and, you know, even simple things like at the end of a session, you know, how do you feel? How did that go? You know, what kind of reaction do they get? Because my goal is always to leave someone ideally leaving the gym feeling great. Yes, they've worked hard. I have done it on occasion, crawling out the gym on all fours, and, you know, I've maybe overbeasted someone. But our goal really with our kind of clients is to have them feeling good. They feel shit in a lot of other environments, you know, and they're stressed out at work. We've got a lot of high level kind of professionals. They need to come in for that hour and feel like they're the most important person in the room for that hour. And that trainer really cares about how they feel for the next hour, you know, and get that, you know, those happy endorphins kind of going, which we all know exercise does for you. We all know that. If we sometimes get out of our own way and go, yes, I want your form to be great. Yes, I'd ideally like to pick the exercises that I think are great for you. But at the end of the day, I'm going to compromise on a lot of that stuff if they're not enjoying it. I don't want to bring a client in and be over-correcting them for the whole hour because the split squat's not perfect. Because they're not going to enjoy that. No one enjoys being over-corrected because it's wrong. It's like, okay, I'm sorry, you know, Mr. Trainer Expert, that me who trains 3 times a week isn't getting this perfect. I think good coaches know how to kind of balance that and make sure that the clients are doing things safely, but you're getting out of their own way, because the number one thing is, did they enjoy that session? Did they love that experience? Because that's what's going to make them come back. Not look at me, how good a trainer am I, and look at how much knowledge I have. Like the way you utilize and use your knowledge alongside a high level of professionalism, and then a high level of kind of personability and connection with your client, I think is what makes people really successful, not just the knowledge.
I'm curious, how many job interviews do you think you've held for personal trainers?
It's in the, I would say, thousands.
So, because I mean, I like the idea of professionalism, because it's something that, I mean, so the service industry that makes its rounds, right? People kind of like that's it's not the first time people listening to this may have heard that the idea of, but the professionalism, I think, is something that is a little bit less echoed. Like, you don't hear that word often, because like I always made the comparison to training to like stripping. Like stripping, like training is something where people do it to pay their way through college, right? And it's like stripping is the same. But I'm curious, like, if you were to, given the thousands of job interviews, because it's one thing to develop as a personal trainer, and you know, there's some lessons that only the job can teach you. You know, there's a lot that you can. I think there's so much to be learned from being in an environment around other trainers. I think that's something that in, you know, as the digital age, or let's say the post-COVID age kind of comes to full fruition, that's something that I think during COVID and the online training boom, something that we didn't realize was improving the quality of the service and also improving the professionalism, was your interaction with other trainers. Because training is like, I have my clients and I have my laptop and I have a coffee shop and I'm an online coach. But when you're in the environment and it's like, you know, if you're in there running a session, it's like, well, I get to watch you actually do the thing. And there are things that I'm learning from you that I don't even know that I'm learning, just like being in that environment. I'm curious, like okay, you're a trainer going into a gym, whether you have an established online client base and you're just looking to kind of cut your teeth in person, or you're just starting out. Based off of your experience, like what are the telltale signs of like, oh, this person, from like a personability and a professionalism standpoint, this person kind of has that thing and we can develop from this, versus like, what are maybe some horror stories of like, oh man, like you're not getting it, you're missing the mark?
I think, I mean, the telltale signs that people, I think, are going to turn out to be a pretty good trainer is, you know, the one thing you can't obviously teach is personality. So, you know, seeing how people interact with those first couple of clients is usually, you know, crucial at the beginning. I just think sometimes how someone carries themselves can be a big thing. I'm a big on body language. I'm like, does the person look like they're interested in what they're doing? And I don't mean, you know, they're going to start acting and like getting on all fours and hands and knees and trying to see what position someone's hips are in and stuff. You can see kind of like the over coaching thing. But do you look like you're engaged in what that person is actually doing throughout the whole set? You know, are they actually you know, trying to find maybe the right cue. But body language is a huge thing for me. Like if someone just doesn't even look interested, I'm kind of like, okay, this is probably not going to work. Is someone just shouting out? And again, this stuff can be learned, so I'm not knocking anybody who's maybe new to the industry and doesn't know this stuff. But are they just shouting out stuff for the sake of shouting it out? Does it mean anything? Is the client responding? Can I see that the trainer's actually clocking the client's response sometimes and adjusting maybe the way they said something? Are they actually trying to find a solution, or are they just trying to spout out everything they've been taught and hope that some of it sticks? And what I tend to notice over the first 3 months, I have a thing with our trainers where we give them an initial 10 clients when you come on board. And that 10 clients is, you know, kind of a testing ground. Not always great for my business, but they've got to learn. You know, they'll come in with the experience that they've already got maybe, or their NASM. And what I'm looking for is obviously, you know, willingness to learn, willingness to make adjustments. If I'm seeing things, and we're sat in the mentoring sessions where I'm kind of like, okay, how do we think that session went? And I'm analyzing something that happened, or I'm looking at, you know, this person and maybe they've not lost any weight for the first couple of weeks, and I'm giving some sort of, you know, advice, instruction on how to improve things, and they actually go off and implement it, and I can see that over client on client that they're improving. That's always a good sign to me. Where I struggle is when we're doing all we can sometimes to help, and the person might be just completely stuck in their own ways, and no matter what, they're not making adjustments. I think the biggest no-no for me always when it comes to interacting with a coach is if they just literally blame everything else. So if a client's not, you know, progressing in the way they should be, but everything is an external factor, everything's an external blame, the client's not doing this, the client's not doing that, they're not listening to this, like, well, okay, that's kind of your job. You know, that's your job as a trainer, to help them to adhere to the plan. What have you actually tried? You know, for me, it's kind of any trainer that takes ownership, I think's going to be solid in this career, right? Like, are you willing to be like, maybe I just don't have the right tools yet? You know, one thing, if I've only got 3 fixes, you know, to a nutritional issue, because that's all I know right now, and I've ramped through all 3 and nothing's changing. I've got 2 ways to look at it. I can either go, I need to learn more because I've got a bit stuck with this client, and, you know, there's clearly something that I'm missing, or you just jump straight to blame. So for me, as soon as people start the blame game and it's never their fault, that's where I start to struggle, because that's an attitude issue, and that's an issue that can be hard to change for a lot of people, and that may be a personality trait as well, that, you know, maybe you don't notice. Maybe that's in every walk of their life, that their answer is, it's not my fault, it's somebody else's. And I think because it's an industry where obviously we do have to rely on clients' participation to a certain degree, I guess it is an easy out to blame the client, whereas I just don't have any time for that. I'm like, it's always on us to try to find the solution. It's never going to be 100%, and some clients will do more and some clients will do less. But it's never the client's fault. I don't like to hear that.
It's funny. I kind of want to like linger on something you said, kind of almost in passing, because I don't think that, given your background, you realize how much or how different what you guys do is when you said, you know, if after a couple of weeks the client's not losing weight, the number of coaches that aren't tracking even the most menial metrics, that are just tracking whether or not the payment went through or not, is, and what that catalyzes, right? Because I think those metrics are just a catalyst. They're almost like a calibrating tool of like, something is wrong. If your client, you know, obviously if the goal is weight loss and they're not losing weight or whatever it is, this person's client's not getting stronger or whatever, the number of clients who, you know, they just lean all on the subjective. It's like, yeah, my clients are feeling pretty good. It's like, hold on, we have a rap sheet here that says they were fucking, you know, 98 kilos when they started, and they're now 98 kilos, and it's been a month. Yeah. You know, that's something that, especially in person, where, you know, if anyone has any background in personal training at like a big box gym. Nothing against big box gyms. They could be interesting ways to learn parts of the industry. But that's something that a lot of people don't have exposure in, is like, I can't actually, because what that does, like the objective metric of something like body weight for a weight loss client, that shines a light not only on the objective side, but also the subjective side, right? Like you said, well, the accountability of like, hey, they're not sticking to their diet. It's like, well, are you giving them white rice and fucking boiled tilapia? Like, I wouldn't stick to that either. Like, you know what I mean? So it's something that I think in personal training development, one, it's not education. I love the emphasis on professionalism and service. And I think being in a facility that fosters that and having exposure to that day in, day out I think it's like really critical. Like I remember my first personal training job, like, and you could speak to an era like this better than I could. I feel like I was in like a tail end of this era where the personal trainers at the gym that I started at were, and not that I think this is a prerequisite, but were fucking monsters. Like they were absolutely, like we would go out, I was 18 years old, I had a fake ID, and the Tecumseh Mall and Devonshire Mall Good Life trainers were like, bouncers would be on notice because they were just the biggest fucking dudes on the planet. And there was a pride when they were training, right? Like that their clients got strong and jacked, and like the clients would go out with them. I remember of all things going to a fucking Nickelback concert when I'm like 18 years old because some rich dude that one of the jack guys trained was also now jacked and just wanted to go to a concert with all his jacked friends. And so like we drove across the border to this fucking Nickelback concert. But there was like there was a culture, there was a standard, almost like you said, of like, if you train here, like you better be a fucking top guy or you're not training here. And it's something where, you know, the result is so overlooked. Like, you know, there's two ends of coaching from an education standpoint. There's like, you know, maybe the more of like X's and O's. And there's also this like emerging coaching market of like the soft skills, which is like you said, you can't teach personality. So it's kind of an odd mix. And maybe you could throw even a third, like the business in there. But none of them are talking about results. And I think when you dig down to like, okay, when you're developing a trainer or a coach, that the signal to noise ratio on results is really potent when you start to look at like, hey, this person's not losing weight. Okay, why? Are you a fucking dial tone that walks around on his toes all day? Like, is that the problem? Like, if you not look this person in the eye in fucking 3 months, you know, or do you not know enough about nutrition? It's just fucking white rice and tilapia. Like, I feel like that, or, you know, your client's not sticking with you because you're not professional. You're showing up late. You're on your phone or whatever. And it's so crazy to me that we're in an industry where that metric tracking is like a unique thing that you guys do, and it's something that you keep eyes on, and it allows you to be like, okay, hey, in your development, based off of this, we need to have a conversation around like one of these buckets, because it's something is falling through the cracks at the end of this funnel, and it's like we're not getting the result. How, like, you know, because I know a little bit about how your professional development works at Hybrid, but how important, how do you treat the actual tracking of client metrics towards their previously stated goals as a success marker for your trainers?
So the way I do, I mean, it's huge. As far as I'm concerned, it's pretty much everything. Now, there's a few caveats to it, and, you know, but I learned the hard way, especially when I was younger, you know, and first starting to manage. And I'm sure it's not a trainer individual issue, but because personal training and working with clients there's so many things that can be happening as to why a client's maybe not progressing. And it's not necessarily always the trainer's fault. I'm not saying it is, but what are we doing to make sure it's at least bare minimum, is it my fault, right? I'm doing everything I can. So I learned the hard way to literally back up every meeting I would have with anybody with stats, no matter what, because over time the stats don't lie, whether it's retention stats, whether it's results, whatever it is. I've worked with enough trainers now to know that, you know, if a trainer, you know, has had 20, 30 clients, how many really good, let's say, before and after pictures have they had? How many clients have they had that have lost like 30, 40, 50 pounds, or just big weight loss clients. You can see a consistency amongst the coaches if you look at the stats. If you ever have a conversation where there's no stats involved, and it's just my feeling, and I say, look, I don't think you're doing very good at your job, then everyone's going to be resistant to that straight away, because everyone feels they're the best personal trainer in the world. I've not spoke to many that don't think they're great. No matter what the conversation is, everyone thinks that they're better than they are, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're not trying. It just depends on what their level of great means to them. So then what I'll do is kind of like, right, okay, I always ask, what is it you think makes you a good trainer? Why do you think you're so good? Which is a bit of a loaded question, because I'm sat here with my stats board going, well, okay, this is what and again, I even have to get out my own way here, because it's kind of, okay, this is the stats I have that I believe makes a good trainer, good coach over time, and what I believe is good for my business. Someone else might think it's a completely different list, but, you know, I'm going to look at retention. You know, so you've had X amount of clients since you've been here, you've kept this many, you've lost this many, and I have my own kind of percentages to what I think is good based on our industry standard as far as our model, sort of the 12-week program sign-up model, because it is front heavy, it is expensive, you definitely can't keep everybody, but if someone's had 20 clients and lost all 20, even though there might be a big list of this person moved out of town, this person lost their job, this person this. I 100% agree with that. But not all 20 left for external reasons. Some of them left because they weren't getting the service. And the tricky thing in the personal training industry, and I know because it's been my job over years to send out the follow-up feedback email when someone's left and no one responds. No one will tell you, hey, it's because I didn't feel I was getting value. But by and large, when people drop off, I look at two things. First of all, I'll go, when someone drops off and the trainer tells me whatever the reason was, I'll go and take a look at the stats. Did they lose any weight? What was their goal? Did they even come close to their goal? Yes or no? Still, someone could get a really good result and leave because now they think they can do it on their own. So that's good. I'm happy with that. If someone leaves for that reason, great, because we've just got a bunch of great marketing, right? But if I look at the stats and it's the opposite, and I'm like, okay, this person was with us 12 weeks. They physically haven't changed. They've not lost any weight. Okay, that might be a reason why they discontinue. They've just spent all this money expecting to get a great result and they've not changed at all. Now, again, might not even be that. All of this is a little subjective, but or if a client drops off with 1 or 2 sessions left, that's a big red flag. Now I'm like, okay, they didn't even want to have the conversation that they weren't continuing. So more likely than not, they didn't continue because they weren't getting the service. Now, I don't know exactly what part of the service sometimes that individual didn't feel they was getting outside of, did they get what they came for? And if they came to lose weight and they didn't lose weight, the answer is no. Chances are, you know, they didn't like what they were getting. I can't always put my finger on what it was. So I tend to back everything up with stats. And then the other side of the coin is I kind of see what I try and coach with my trainers is our job is to deliver the service no matter what. And along the way, adjust the service according to what the client's willing to do. And I see that part as an agreement. And I think where a lot of trainers go wrong is client sits down, I want to lose 20 odd pounds. Trainer's like, yes, go. This is what we're going to have to do. Can you do everything that I'm about to ask you to do? So can you stick to the training? Can you stick to the nutrition plan? Client's pretty excited. Yes, I can. Go. And then a week in, it's not working. They can't follow it. They can't stick to it. We make a few adjustments, but there's no adjustment of timeline or the cost that week you've just lost is going to cost you. 2 weeks in, it's not working. 3 weeks in, I'm still making adjustments. The client's still not really got going yet. Client's not willing to track. Whatever it might be, there's no problem with what a client is or isn't willing to do. That's up to them. But my job as a professional, and this is where the professional side of it comes in as far as I'm concerned, is I have to be willing to tell you what your choice is, how your choices limit my coaching. And that's fine as long as we agree that if you're not going to, because you know, it's amazing. People will come in to lose weight, but they don't want to weigh themselves and they don't want to track their food and they don't want to do all the stuff that's necessary. And you're kind of like, okay, great. Just understand, I under those circumstances, I don't know if you're going to lose weight. Are you okay with that, right? Or someone's not willing to do a, start on, let's say, a 30% deficit. I'm only willing to start on 10 or 15. I'm like, okay, so how we said we could maybe lose 20 pounds in 12 weeks. Maybe that's now going to take 18, 20, 22 weeks, whatever. Are you okay with that? New agreement. Yes, cool, let's go. That's the new target. And so for every adjustment we're making based on customer feedback, based on what they're willing to do, what they're not willing to do. Now, my job is always to get them towards that, let's say, gold standard of adherence. But all of a sudden, the promise we made over 12 weeks has changed. And if I don't adjust that promise, you'd be amazed how many clients still think that, but you said I could do this in 12 weeks. I was like, yes, under these circumstances. Under these circumstances, now we're here. Are you okay with that? And that's always my final thing is, are you okay with the new direction that we're going to go based on what you're willing to do, not willing to do, and based on my new solution for you getting to your ultimate goal, whatever that might be. And I think those are the conversations that a lot of trainers kind of struggle with. And because those conversations are not happening, especially when someone's not progressing, now the client's got it in their head that this isn't really working, it's expensive, I'm not really enjoying it, I'm not getting where I want to be, and then they just kind of drop off. So, that's how I see the accountability piece. It goes both ways, but I think it's on me as the coach to highlight those adjustments and are we in agreement. So when I'm highlighting if a client's done everything they can to keep hold of a client, those are the steps I'm looking at. Like, did we have these conversations? I can see the client's not lost any weight in 12 weeks. What was the reasons? And if it's, well, the client couldn't do this, the client couldn't. Okay, I see that you're shifting everything to the client, but what did you do? Show me the amount of adjustments you made to the meal plan. Show me, communication daily if it was necessary. Show me that you did everything you can do to deliver the service that we promise. And then if a client still hasn't progressed, let's say, or they still choose to move on, then I'm kind of all good because we delivered the service anyway. We're never going to be 100%. But what frustrates me is when the trainer gives up on the service because the client's not willing to do the things the trainer's asking them to do. And now the service is no longer the service, right? You live your life in hotels, right? There's a set service you expect in certain hotels, I would assume, right? And you might not use all of it. I don't use all the fancy shampoos and shit. But if I've just paid $500 for a night in whatever, I don't know that many expensive hotels, and I always go to the same hotel, and the price hasn't changed, and all of a sudden they've got rid of the fancy soap, they've got rid of the little ear things that you clean your ears out with, all those little niceties that I don't really use but I appreciate. Then all of a sudden I'm out like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to that hotel again. They've lowered their standards. Their service wasn't what it was. And now I'm going somewhere else. And I didn't even use half of the service, but I'm paying for it. That's what annoys me. When someone's paying for the service, deliver the service no matter what. Doesn't matter how much of it they're using.
Yeah, I mean, in the conversation around managing expectations, I feel like that was kind of at the core of that whole thing of like, teaching trainers to manage the expectation of the client. Like, hey, if you're going to do this, this is a new agreement, right? We're going to be, we're going to be looking at 24 weeks rather than 8 to 12 weeks. If you want to eat at a 10% deficit over a 30% deficit, I wonder how, from a kind of shifting that idea or that focus of accountability and managing expectations from the client to the trainer. How are those conversations had between you and the trainer when it comes to professional development? Because I feel like it's a similar arc of, skirting responsibility, because the expectation, we've talked a lot offline about the struggles in in-person training given the digital age. And I feel like managing expectations of in-person trainers in their career arc has a similar storyline of like a trainer's like, right, the 10K month or the 6-figure year or whatever, and then you go, okay, the arrangement for that is 120 hours a month in training on the floor, And you know, you don't have, you know, you have a great setup because you know, the prospecting is kind of handled at the highest level, and that's where I think a lot of trainers struggle to get off the ground, is in, you know, learning the systems around sales and how to sell in-person PT, mostly because they don't have enough experience in doing in-person PT. They don't even know what the fuck they're selling. Yeah. So I wonder how you manage those expectations as a business owner, right? Whether you're, you know, consulting with a trainer or a gym owner that's, you know, remote, or it's something where you're working one-to-one with a trainer in your gym. How do you manage their expectations and the arrangement that they have? Because trainers, people come in with these goals, and it is a low barrier of entry, and there is like a lot on the online space. Like I'd love a Bugatti. I know you would too. You have an affinity for very expensive, fast cars. And it's like, okay, man, but like, here's the arrangement. This is what it takes in this industry to do X, Y, or Z. What is the tone of those conversations?
I think for me, I try and approach everything, especially with my coaches. They might tell you different sometimes, depending on what mood I'm in. But I approach trying to sort of mentor a trainer as a trainer in this. I don't look at them necessarily as, you know, Joe Blogs, the hybrid coach. What do you have to do to succeed at hybrid? I want coaches to want to succeed for themselves, because I've worked for quite a few gyms. I've been lucky that I've stayed solid at, like, actually for 30 years in the industry, the total amount of gyms isn't that many. I've stuck around at a lot of places and learned a lot, but I'm probably companies maybe five or six deep. So I've stuck around at a lot of places for a long time, and some well-known places. But my underlying theme was always, I want to be the best coach I can be in that gym, whatever gym that was at the time. And when I become the best there, I want to go to another room and become even better and be the best one in that one. And then when I found I enjoyed management, I was like, okay, I'm just going to manage anyway. I don't need a title. I don't need someone to give me a badge. If no one else is going to step up, looks like I'm in charge. I like that. I'll walk in a room and, you know, if no one else is going to step up and run this room, I'll run it. It's fine. I'll lead. It's not a problem. I might fuck it up, but someone's got to lead, and we'll go from there. So when I'm kind of talking to the coaches about setting expectations, I don't just sit there and kind of go, this is what hybrid expects. Because to be honest, hybrid is an accumulation, you know, if you're sitting down with me, of everything I've done in my whole career. So I've gone in different directions. I went off into the, you know, operations and GM mode in my late 20s, you know, and all of a sudden I was walking around a health club in a shirt and tie going, this isn't for me. And personal training was getting big back then. So my mates were all doing PT, and they were coming and going as they pleased, and I'm stuck in, you know, on a 2 till 10, you know, being like, yeah, I don't want to do this. So, you know, move towards personal training, then move back towards management. So I try my best, and it's hard, because what I have noticed as I've gotten older is the generation gaps got bigger. And I'm like, fuck, I don't know if anyone even understands what I'm saying anymore. And then I try and remind myself of what I was like as a young 20-odd-year-old. Would I have listened to me? I don't know. I like to think that they take a little bit of what I say. But this has been a career for me. This has been my whole life. So I do try to come at it from that angle with people and go, what do you want? Right? Like you said, there's all these big, you know, pots at the end of different rainbows if you look at social media as to how much you could potentially earn in this industry. But what do you actually want? What do you want to do with your career? And a lot of people don't know, and that's an issue. So then I have to sit there and be like, okay, there was a time I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I always wanted a gym. I don't know why, I just did. I from going in gyms as a kid, I was like, I'd watch the old school gym owners just sit there all day. I used to go to one gym, bodybuilder, and it wasn't hot in the UK very often, but I used to go at about 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon when I got off work, and, you know, to be sat outside, top off, jacked, sunbathing. Didn't really look like he was doing much. Obviously, as I got older, I learned that they weren't making their money from the gym. They were doing lots of other things to make their money. Once I grew up, I was like, oh, that's why they look somewhat stress-free and run a bodybuilding gym that nobody's ever in. but they've got a fancy car and all that stuff. But I was like, I love that lifestyle. Those gym owners sat there reading Muscle Mag. I was like, that was me. Little did I know that running a business was a little bit more than sitting around doing nothing all day. So I try and come at it from, you know, trying to develop someone's career in a way that, look, getting good at anything isn't complicated, but you've got to put the work in to get good. And I use examples. I've got plenty of people that I know in the industry, like yourself, where I'm like, this didn't just happen by accident. They got really good. And I also try and teach from some of my own mistakes. I'm like, get yourself, nothing frustrates me more than, you know, interviewing a trainer who's been in the industry for over 10 years, still just working away on a gym floor. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what they really want, but then they come to you and use experience. I've been a trainer for 10 years, that's why I'm good. When I say, okay, show me some evidence that shows me you're a good trainer, show me some results, show me some client testimonials, and they've got nothing to show for them. Like, you've just put 10 years of your life into this and you can't show me anything. And a lot of people have made that mistake. I think social media has made it a bit easier to have evidence. I mean, it was a bit difficult back in my day, fucking, you know, taking pictures on a Polaroid or whatever we had. Probably wasn't even taking pictures, but you know, so I'm trying to like, look, everything you do is building up a portfolio and evidence for that job that you don't even know is out there yet. You know, if you look at the opportunities that have come your way, I don't know how many you planned for, but a lot of them came your way because it's exactly zero, because you were really fucking good at what you do and people can see that. I said, you're on a gym floor right now full of wealthy people that are watching what you're doing. You know, that person might, you know, I didn't run around asking for investment to help me set up hybrid. You know, people came to me because they saw what I did. And I was lucky enough to get involved with a couple of people that were like, do you want to get involved in this? Because we know you can help us go wherever we want to take it. But if I'd spent that time and in that environment with those people, walking around the gym with my hands in my pockets, not really caring, not delivering a good service, not educating and training the trainers that place to a level that people could kind of see, that go, you know what, you know, we want to put some money into something, we want to build something, we want you to help us build it, it would never have happened. And I think learning or trying to sort of somewhat say to people that you're not, you know, I always worked hard in whatever job I was doing, but I was always working hard for the next opportunity. I didn't always know what that was going to be, but it was like, okay, but if I don't work hard now, I'm not going to get the next opportunity. And I think that's sometimes a tough sell for trainers, especially they're in their 20s. Look, I remember what it was like to be young. They're going out partying, you know, relationships, all these are the things that are a big distraction. But it's like sooner or later, time's going to pass. And whilst you might be playing around at this right now, sooner or later you're going to be in your 30s or your 40s. And what are you going to have to show for all the work you're putting in right now? Forget money. You know, forget that you're not paid very much right now or any of that sort of stuff, because the only way you're going to get paid more is to continue to improve and get better. And then, you know, the list of what that takes, you know, what does a portfolio look like for a trainer? You know, we all know what a portfolio looks like for, you know, a junior lawyer, you know, that wants to make partner. There's a path. These are the things you should be trying to tick off. And that's kind of the list of things I give my coaches. I'm like, look, I know you think I'm being a hard ass right now, but results matter. And you might not need to be a transformation expert where every single one of your clients has got ripped up abs, but do your clients leave Google reviews? You know, do your clients do video testimonials and tell their story? Like, I get more emotional over a good video testimonial, to be honest, than I do a before and after picture. Because sometimes I listen to those nuggets of things that we've changed, and some of my trainers have changed these people's lives, and I'm like, wow, this is why I do this shit. But sometimes instilling that into that level of pride, I guess, something that's a little bit more important than money, at least right now. Money will come, but right now, pride in the people's lives that you're changing is kind of, I'm going off on a fucking tangent here, I know, but trying to instill that, for me, is the only way I know. So I know I bang on about hard work, but it's hard work in the right direction, and why are you doing it? And I think a lot of coaches don't always know why they're really doing this, because maybe it's a bit of a side gig, maybe it was something they fell into because it was easy at the time. But okay, now you're in it, let's make something of it.
Yeah, and I think the idea of attrition, it goes like massively understated in an industry that has a low barrier, like you mentioned, that has a high earning potential, and the only real difference is attrition over time, like hard work over time, which is like essentially attrition. And it's like, I wonder sometimes maybe if it's a disconnect of personalities that are attracted to training as a career are also the same type of people who don't see it like a career. Like when you put it in the legal standpoint of like, a junior lawyer trying to make partner, it's like, yeah, there's a track here, right? When you get into law, this is what you do. Right, like you go in and if you want to work really hard, you do a bunch of case files and you work under someone, and you get to a point and you make partner and you make more money, and then your name's on the door and you get cool business cards and all that. Where it's like there's a track in training, right? If you want it to be like if you want it is there if you want it, like tenureship in a professor role. Right, like you go in, you get published, you do, you're an associate professor, your junior professor, your adjunct faculty, you get published in a bunch of papers. And at a certain point, the university is just going to pay you to be there, right? Yeah. Like, hey, regardless of almost what you do, you can kind of just be here, and students will come because you're here because you've done a lot of stuff. And it's like, I think that's as true in training as anywhere. It's just like the stuff part people don't realize. It's like the stuff part is the everyday. It's like, you make a really good point about, especially down in hybrid with the clientele, given where you guys are located, like, the number of times that I've heard that story. I think I want to say it's Mark Magna who owns anatomy gyms in Miami area, and I remember Don Saladino, I think, has told this story about Mark on the podcast, that Mark was a personal trainer somewhere in New York City years. I mean, I think Mark actually played in the NFL, so years ago, prior to his career. And he was walking through the gym at like 5 a.m. in the morning and saw like a wrapper of a protein bar. And he saw it, he picked it up and just put it in the trash, and he just kind of carried on. It was a guy on the Stairmaster. And this is like, the Upper East Side, New York City or whatever it was, and a lot of money. And that guy on the Stairmaster is his primary investor. And Anatomy has, I think they're in, I forget what luxury hotel they're partnering with for Four Seasons or St. Regis or something in Miami. And that was, 20 years later. And his investor was like, why I'm doing this? Because at 5 a.m. in the morning on some fateful Tuesday, you walked by when no one was watching, or you didn't think anyone was watching. And I watched you pick up a protein bar. And here you got some big money Wall Street guy, and that's what he fixates on. And that the opportunity to make that impression is on offer to you every single day. And the thing with that, and what I love about that story, is that exists in a time like without cameras.
Yep.
The idea now that like the whole world's a stage, like look at this Ibiza final boss guy. I think of this guy and I think, man, personal trainers are really missing the mark. Like this guy, it's your one reel away, and not that this should be your motivation, but if for no other reason to be a good person and to cut your teeth and to be attentive, then like, I think it was Shakespeare that said all the world's a stage. And it's like, man, that is as true now as when he wrote it, if not more so. And it's, it's something that, just instilling that idea of like, because, and I do think it's tough because at the same time where it's like, okay, understand this is a career if you want it to be, understand there is a map and a trajectory there if you want it to be, but know that it's likely not going to be the way you think it's going to go. Know it's there, trust it's there, and know that the trust comes from working hard and taking opportunities.
100%. And like you said, to touch on the performance thing, but I think personal training is a performance. My old boss drilled that into everybody, And, I looked back and, a lot of things he was right about. And that was a big part of it. It's like, there's nothing more frustrating than when I hear like, trainer comes in, they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders, all this shit going on. And it's like, but some, their client walks in and they meet them with this, hey, how's it going? Like, oh, I'm tired and this happened to me. They're like, no one gives a shit. You're there to be a professional. Do your job. Like if if something comes up within the chit chat, fine, they can complain, they can moan, but also remember, you're usually talking to some highly driven professional person that has just as much shit going on as you and much higher stakes than you. They don't necessarily want to hear all your problems. So getting in the gym and understanding that even just the way you meet your client, that first step, especially at 6 a.m. I'm not saying, you bounce off the walls like you've been up all night on, I don't know, cocaine or something, but, meet them with a level of energy that at 6 a.m. brings them up a notch, not brings them down to your level because you had a bad night's sleep. Get over your bad night's sleep. The minute you walk in the door, and I know it's a cliche, but leave your shit at the door and focus on your client, because that person's paying you a lot of money. And like you just said, you don't know what they're clocking. You don't know where that next opportunity is coming from. And, how do you do things when no one's watching? Big saying. And I just think, we're all guilty of maybe not doing, stepping up sometimes when someone's watching. But I think the real skill is, do you care anyway? That example of someone picking something up off the floor is a perfect one, because I know a million people that would have just walked straight past it. You just see it all the time. So, I think it's a huge lesson, and I think I do try to help people with that sort of stuff, just with my experiences, because like the experiences I've had, I know a ton of people like you've just mentioned that have got opportunities based on things they wouldn't have even known they were being watched at, or they got good in spite of, any other hurdles that might have been. They just cared enough to be as good as they could be, and people appreciate that. It's, again, we're in a people business. So if people are appreciating what you do, sooner or later you might get a client, or you might have someone who appreciates it that much that they want to help you step up in life, right? I have a lot of successful people that have been clients. So, if you treat them right, then they could be a step up for you further down the line as well. And I think seeing that and seeing the bigger picture is something that some people get caught up in their own bullshit and don't realize the opportunities that are sat there in front of them every single day.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, for people who are looking, because I think, mentorship and personal development in this space is, it's as saturated as training itself at this point. But for people who would be interested in, either coming out to hybrid or working with you remotely, like, what's the best way for people to kind of get in contact with you?
Email john@hybridgymla, or my Instagram, John Bond Coaching. I believe I've got a couple at the minute, but that's the main one.
I'll make sure we track down the right ones and put it yeah, I know how that goes.
I'm not, I'm probably going to downplay my services here. I'm here to help people. What you get out of me is straight honesty. I've been in the industry a long time. There's a ton of people that call themselves mentors. I don't really like to use that term too much, but if you're looking to at least navigate your career, then I think I can kind of help out with that. So.
Yeah, now is my turn to actually tell the real story. No, I mean, the story arc and the career, and I think one thing that makes our industry fickle and makes attrition difficult is the change of the tides, right? Fucking investment banking is investment banking. It was 30 years ago. It was kind of similar bullshit that it is now, right? Bull, bear markets, whatever the fuck. But training is so the ups and downs of economic trends, what's in vogue, survive, especially in the PT world. PT, we're the Rolls Royce of the fitness industry, right? And there's, you can get on the city bus of the fitness industry and go to Barry's boot camp or some shit like that. So in the ability to navigate all levels of high-end one-to-one PT for 30 years is you got more than a few things figured out. You've got from business ownership of a PT gym to management of one of the largest, international, if not the one that set the precedent for one-to-one PT, high-end, high-ticket service. And, coming out of, you're from Blackpool, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's something where, there's becomes a proof of concept of an ability to solve problems. And I think in our industry, it's like some of the biggest problems are the changing tides. Like, how do you survive? How do you the '08 crisis, the 2000, we sort of CrossFit, the F45, and it's like, because one-to-one PT still remains the premier product, and it always will be.
Yeah.
And the people who can do that really well are the superlative practitioners in our space. So I highly encourage, if you're a young trainer and you're looking to get reps in, cut your teeth in a facility around like real professionals and set yourself up. John is Jon, right? John at Hybrid Gym LA, not H. No H's here. But yeah, we'll put all the stuff in the show notes, man. I really appreciate you taking the time, and like I said off air, hopefully we'll see you early next month.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you as always.